Hello everyone and welcome back to episode 140, I believe, of your favourite Formula 1 show. Yes, Knowing Wheel returns to recap all of the antics from the Qatar Grand Prix. And of course, for doing, so much sprint racing, so much regular racing, so many weird and wonderful rules and incidents from the weekend, I need a partner in crime. It's Jamie183. How are we doing, my guy?
I'm good. I'm ready for this. Like the drivers should have been ready for the race yesterday.
How are you suggesting they should have been ready?
We won't be passing out by the end of this, ideally.
No. Hopefully, if we pass out because of this, then I think we're in deep trouble. But we'll wait and see as to how things goes. We're still yet to have a fainting episode on Knowing Wheel, aren't we?
No, or a swatting or anything like that, really. So
no, we're doing well.
It can be arranged.
We're doing well up to this point. But of course, heading into the weekend, obviously we did a Qatar GP pre-show, didn't we? Wasn't really a lot else that got confirmed, because of course a lot of the big talk last week obviously was surrounding Andretti, wasn't it? Obviously I think we did briefly mention it, but of course Daniel Ricciardo still unable to return, but will apparently be back in the car ready for the US Grand Prix at Qatar next time out. But of course, Jamie, we have Friday night qualifying back again, and it shows you how ridiculous a format it is when I like to tell people that watching Formula 1 is part of my job, and I'd almost forgot it was on.
Yeah, I'm more prone to forgetting that sprint qualifying is happening, to be honest. But yeah, real qualifying was happening on Friday night. I was able to follow it on Twitter. Sadly, couldn't watch. But it started off Q1. Nothing. Yeah, it's no surprises really. I guess the only surprise you could argue would be Lance Stroll, but at this point, P17 is his equal best performance since summer break. So, maybe not.
The Q1 exit didn't surprise me. The way he acted afterwards did, though, even by Lance Stroll standards.
Yeah, he looks done with it, doesn't he? He was like throwing his steering wheel out, like pushing people away, pushing his team members away in the media pen. What was it he said? It was like bad race or bad qualifying session for you, Lance. And he was like, yeah. What are you going to do tomorrow? He's like, drive faster.
Yeah, which is odd, isn't it? Because if Kimi Räikkönen did that, we'd all love him.
Yeah.
But Kimi Räikkönen also didn't have a toilet in his house up until about the age of 13 or something ridiculous. Do you ever know this, Jamie?
I didn't know that. No,
apparently, his parents had the choice between buying him a go-kart or fitting a toilet in their house, and they chose go-kart.
Wow, fair enough.
Kimi
I think it's hard to
money.
It's hard to feel sympathy for Stroll when he doesn't have like. His talent is obviously incredible, but he's not the highest caliber driver. Whereas someone like Kimi, who has a bad day, or even Max or Norris or whoever, like if they start having a go or like acting brash to the media, it's like, okay, they're a top driver, they've had a bad day. Stroll, it's just harder to like him because it feels like every week he's just doing the same things. I think he's just go and play tennis.
He's just easy to dislike, isn't he, as well, I think, about Stroll.
Yeah.
Or, you say play tennis, he could go off over to Aston Martin's WEC programme. They've announced the beautiful Aston Martin Valkyrie will be racing in LMDH, which was kind of the only reason it was built in the first place. But I'm looking forward to seeing that in the future. But of course, this is still a Formula 1 podcast for now. I'd love to branch out into World Endurance, but Jamie doesn't watch it because he's boring.
I don't watch anything other than F1. I barely even watch F1.
Shocking behaviour.
I can't watch it live that often, but there we go. But yeah, Stroll, obviously Lawrence Stroll, instead of just sacking his son or, telling him try a different sport, he's just going to keep employing multiple world champions to just beat him into submission, basically.
Seems like the goal. It seems like an expensive way of doing it. Could have probably done that with Felipe Drugovich the way he's driving around at the moment. But it is what it is. But honestly, qualifying Friday night, really the only big story aside from Stroll having another temper tantrum was just about track limits, wasn't it?
Yeah. So many deletions. There's a few tracks in the year where it's going to be a big problem all weekend. The track is so high speed corners, and obviously they're racing drivers. They're going to try and exploit every bit of track they can. And often when the runoff is not really there, they're just going to have to, they take too much speed into a corner, get a bit oversteer, whatever. It's a very dusty surface, of course, in Qatar as well. They're going to run wide. They're going to, half the places around the track, half the corners, they're going to have the opportunity to run wide at. So naturally it will be an issue at tracks like this. And yeah, Perez was caught out by it in Q2, wasn't he? Although saying that, the lap that he set a lap towards the end of the session, which was an improvement, but it actually still wouldn't have been good enough to get into Q3, the improved lap. So that was deleted, left him in P13, which was pretty abysmal. Also, Carlos Sainz going out in Q2, despite being on it since the summer break, really not a great Friday night for him. But yeah, they would have kind of shocked. Perez and Sainz both going out in arguably probably the fastest car and
probably most definitely the fastest car.
Yeah,
and yeah, third or fourth fastest at the moment, isn't it? But I mean, yeah, it was just all about obviously drivers trying to make sure they weren't getting invalidated because, like we said, the track had recently been resurfaced, hadn't it? It had all been reprofiled and redone, which of course, as we got towards the end of qualifying as well, very much became a problem with the curbing as well. But it would be Max Verstappen that obviously he only needed to finish P6 in the sprint race, but would showcase that he was still absolutely dominant force by taking pole on Friday night. McLaren as well. It was all just confusing, wasn't it, after qualifying? Because of course we had driver interviews, drivers being told that actually they hadn't qualified where they thought they qualified, so we had an awkward moment where Lando Norris had to walk off from being inside the top 3 pen. Oscar Piastri then did the interview and then afterwards got his lap invalidated as well. So it was all just a bit of a disaster, wasn't it?
Yeah, not the best showing really, but yeah. So the end result, you had Verstappen on pole, never really in doubt. Only did one run in Q3, which was pretty impressive. And then Russell, Hamilton, P2 and 3 in the end. Originally it would have been Norris, Russell, Piastri. But yeah, Russell, Hamilton, P2, 3. Alonso up in P4 with his teammate doing the exact opposite, being fourth from last. Leclerc 5, Piastri to 6, Gasly, Ocon doing all right for Alpine, and Bottas in the top 10, which is rare for Alfa Romeo, with Lando Norris actually not getting a lap at all because both of his runs in Q3 were invalidated. So yeah, not the best from him on a Friday night. But that left the grid for Sunday. But before then, we had the small matter of a World Championship to decide in the sprint race.
Which is bizarre to say out loud, isn't it? Because I remember when the calendar got confirmed, we'd said how Max Verstappen is going to do something ridiculous and win a World Championship in a sprint weekend on a sprint Saturday. And it took one go for him to do that. Yeah. And I guess that's always a risk when you pile the back end of the season full of them. Because is there 2 more to go still? We've got 3 sprints in 4 weekends if you include Qatar.
Yeah.
It's horrible in the F1 game, Jamie. You just spend so much time driving.
Well, that's why you don't play it. But yeah, ended up obviously Saturday morning qualifying. Again, fairly normal circumstances, Q1 and 2, other than some people's GOAT, Lewis Hamilton, going out in Q2 in deciding to boycott Q3 as he might do quite often in 2023. But yeah,
hasn't happened that much.
It happened in 2 out of the 4 sprints so far, which is a bit weird.
Yeah, he's not had much luck in the sprints, has he?
No, he hasn't. But yeah, left in P12 with a lot of work to do to get any points. Obviously, it only goes down to 8th in the sprint race. And yeah, weirdly, in sprint quali 3, Verstappen just wasn't on it. His first lap got deleted. And in his second lap, I guess he was being so careful to get a lap in that he just didn't go fastest, which is a rarity in a qualifying session this year. And that left it with a McLaren 1-2. But even more strangely, arguably, Oscar Piastri leading Lando Norris on the grid for a 1-2 for McLaren in the order that you might not expect.
I would say, with the way recent races have been going, it's become more and more, especially on qualifying, been more and more what we'd expect.
Yeah, Piastri's been doing bits, hasn't he, recently, but Norris seems to have a bit more in race pace. But yeah, quality pace has been very closely matched.
Yeah, no, definitely.
Piastri did it.
It's been interesting, hasn't it? But of course, yeah, Verstappen would still be right there, obviously, behind them in P3, alongside George Russell. So, maybe there were some of us hoping something might happen.
He just turned it on me.
Yeah, lockout row 3. Nico Hülkenberg, often shows up for a sprint race. Sprint qualifying. He doesn't show up for the races at all. In P7 there. Perez actually decided to show up for Q3 ahead of Alonso and Ocon, of course, 2 very, very good friends from their Alpine days. But that did set us up then, ready for the sprint race, didn't it, Jamie? And instantly, of course, we mentioned there have been tyre problems. Of course, it was, a 19-lap sprint race, I believe?
Yep,
Set
that's
up to
right.
be. And already, it wasn't that the tyres were wearing out too quickly, it was that they were being ripped apart from the inside because of the
Yeah.
curbing and the new track surface. So a lot of drivers were very, very nervous going in that the tyres would just go bang. So we kind of had a big split strategy between the softs and the mediums, didn't we, on the grid?
Yeah. So you had the key players were really Russell, Leclerc, and Sainz on the soft tire, and kind of the McLarens, Verstappen, and then both Mercedes. No, just Hamilton. Sorry, were on medium tires. And yeah, I think certainly Norris said afterwards he was very surprised people went for softs at all, because they kind of knew from even the hour practice session that the softs were not going to give them the pace they needed to do 19 laps. It was all a bit up in the air because there was always this underlying rumbling that the FIA were going to do something about the tyre structure and integrity, and the Pirelli were going to announce something, but they didn't know when. So teams were trying to like save mediums a bit as well for the race, thinking that they might implement something like a mandated stint length, which is what ended up happening on Sunday morning. So yeah, maybe that came into it for Ferrari and Mercedes a little bit with those choosing to go for soft tyres. But either way, they were still pointlessly won in the sprint, and they were going to go for it on their softs. And straight away, actually, the race began. Piastri got away very well, but Norris and Verstappen, both on the mediums, got immediately jumped by Sainz and Russell, and Leclerc got involved as well. So almost straight down. It was 4 wide briefly into turn 1. And Verstappen obviously just trying to protect his front wing and protect his car from any damage. Got a bit shuffled down, and him and Norris dropped, I think, to 5th and 6th on the first lap, which was really only the first 4 corners, because then Liam Lawson went for a little spin in the dust and caused a safety car immediately. So that helped out the soft drivers, because obviously effectively shortened the race by a couple laps. So I'm sure, the drivers on softs were probably pretty pleased.
Yeah, well, pretty pleased temporarily, weren't they? Of course, Russell as well, though, managed to take the lead from Oscar Piastri, didn't he? Made a real habit of making overtakes at the hairpin, didn't he, all weekend long?
Yeah.
In the end, which obviously we'll get into. But yeah, as you mentioned, of course, no one... It was just a bizarre weekend, wasn't it? It never really felt like anyone knew exactly what was going on at any moment, which is not ideal for a Formula 1 race. But yeah, as obviously Jamie said, we got a safety car very early on there. I think Lawson, probably his roughest weekend, and obviously what might be his last weekend at the moment in Formula 1, or what looks likely to be his last race weekend, at least until 2025, unless something crazy happens. But of course, as soon as the safety car went in, it would come back out again, as Logan Sargent once again. It was a rather odd spin this time around, wasn't it? It felt like looked like quite a lazy spin, but would beat his Williams.
Yeah, and they both rookies. Well, ironically, two of the rookies making pretty rookie errors, to say, use the word twice. But while the other rookie was just doing good stuff in the front running,
fighting for the lead. Yeah.
And after the race got going again, you kind of had immediately all the soft drivers kind of realizing, right, we've messed up here, haven't we? So you had Russell still in the lead with the Piastri second, 2 Ferraris, and then Verstappen and Norris, and all the drivers on softs immediately started dropping back. So Verstappen was able to work his way through both Ferraris and chilling third for a bit. Meanwhile, Russell was losing the lead that he earned very well, by his own words, that is.
Yep.
And Piastri took it back, DRS down to turn 1, and that was kind of it for the race win, ultimately. Verstappen also got Russell, and you just saw this kind of shuffling down of all the soft runners just losing pace.
Well, it wasn't even a shuffle, was it, really? It was just a complete fall off.
Yeah, they were like 1.5 seconds a lap, roughly. At first, that was always going to get worse and worse. But another saving grace for the soft runners was that Esteban Ocon decided he would cause another safety car, yet another one. He was on softs with Hülkenberg and Perez just behind him on mediums. Hulk went for a move into turn 1, did a little switchback. Perez done an even bigger switchback, so they're 3 wide into turn 2. Ocon has no idea that there's 2 cars trying to pass him at once, and completely moves across on Hulk, takes all 3 of them out, and that's that for the championship, obviously, because Perez was out of the race there. And I think, more importantly, Hülkenberg is probably going to finish P4 that race. and get his
Still
first
wouldn't
point
have
since the
counted as a
previous
podium.
sprint. Well, no, it's P4 anyway, isn't it? But, still annoying that he hasn't had a chance to score points in about 6 months, and the chance comes and then Ocon just takes him out.
I mean, it was always going to be Ocon, wasn't it?
Yeah. So that was, a title confirmed that I don't think they told Verstappen, but I'm sure he worked it out.
Maybe if you know that one of the Red Bulls in the gravel trap and you realise it's not yours, the money is it's probably your teammate.
Yeah. So another safety car, a bit of a longer one as well, which kind of saved the soft runners a little bit, although they were still in the mud. Once the safety car came back in, you had Norris work his way up to third, and I thought at the time that Verstappen was probably going to catch Piastri at least and have a go at him for the race win, but that never really happened. Whether the McLaren's pace was just pretty good, or Verstappen was taking it easy, making sure that he secured the title without a DNF, because that would have been quite sad. That was kind of that. And Piastri, in his rookie season, came home to win the Qatar sprint race. So very funny that Norris has had two teammates at McLaren. Sorry, three teammates, and two of them have gone on to win races, while he hasn't.
And bearing in mind, he's watched his other teammate now also win 2 Grand Prix in Formula 1. Not in the same car, but...
Yeah, so rough times for Norris, still trying to get his race win under his belt, but fair play to Oscar Piastri. Really, really great Saturday for him. Pole and the win. Yeah,
it was just fantastic, wasn't it? And I think, obviously, you mentioned there, I think it was more just McLaren now. I mean, as we saw on Sunday as well, just seemed to be legitimate, like Red Bull's only legitimate threat. And of course, Japan, no, they weren't there at all. Qatar, all weekend, they seemed there or thereabouts, didn't they? And Piastri just had the pace to hold off Verstappen towards the end. Shout out as well in the sprint race, Alex Albon, P7. You've got your McLarens, your Mercedes, your Ferraris, your Aston Martins, your Red Bulls, and once again, Alex Albon somehow scores points against all of that.
Yeah, and he's just doing the work. Like, Williams are so secure in P7 now that, like, even if, I don't know, Haas or Alpha go on an absolute run at the end of the season, I still don't think they're going to catch Williams.
No,
and all of that is down to Albon, because obviously Sargent hasn't scored a point yet. So, fair play.
It has just been, such a weird little season by Williams, but it does seem like the car, of course, that, there's only so many times we can just say, oh, it's a good car down the straight, because it's picking up points around other circuits now as well. Almost picked up points in Singapore until Sergio Perez took him out.
Had other ideas, yeah.
Yeah, it is kind of mad, isn't it, this year, the way that Williams team has kind of started turning around, obviously, when you don't talk about the American. But anyway, of course, as we move into Sunday, though, Jamie, we would get official clarification, as you previously mentioned, by the FIA and Pirelli, even. Tyres were mandated to only go a maximum of 18 laps, because clearly, if they made it one more lap, then drivers would have tried to gamble a two-stop.
Yes, yeah, and it was almost, I think it's probably a fair enough thing to do if the tyres aren't safe to do. If Pirelli decide the tyres aren't safe to do more than that, it's like, who can argue?
Well, they should be bringing tyres that
they should
last.
Be, yeah.
But,
yeah. But in the circumstances, it was probably the right thing to do. And yeah, the reason they didn't make it one lap longer is because then, you would have done you'd done 3 19-lap stints and tried to make it the race distance on, like, dangerously dead tyres. So yeah, but then even so, people tried, like, they maxed out the 18 laps, didn't they? So yeah. Well, but the interesting thing, it wasn't due to tyre wear, as Matt said. It was the structural integrity of the tyre was just, they couldn't trust it on the new curbs and new track surface. So they were able to push the whole race because the tyre wear was never going to be an issue, which actually made it quite an interesting spectacle. Obviously, physically for the drivers, as we all get onto, and just race pace wise generally, no one was tyre saving at all because there was no need. So yeah, I think they kind of used it as a test session for future rule changes, maybe. But we'll see. It
did worry me that we were going to accidentally end up with a banging race, and then the FIA were going to go, right, now on, you have to make 3 pit stops at Grand Prix in 2024. Yeah. Because I've said for years, I wouldn't mind if they had a rule mandating that you have to use all 3 compounds. But what that would probably leave you with is just 5 laps at the end of a race where you're on a set of the soft compound tyres, or if you get a safety car come out, everyone puts on a set of soft tyres or hard tyres or whatever
For a
the
lap.
tyre isn't that weekend for a lap, and then just goes back to a normal strategy. But even that could make it interesting if it just follows one season.
Yeah. And I remember, this is a weird thing to bring up, but 2013 China, there was an offset strategy back in the days where only two compounds. But the option was could do like 4 or 5 laps at most, and the prime back in those days could do like 20 laps. So you had kind of similar to this weekend in a way. Like you had one tyre you could do a substantial distance on, another tyre you literally wanted to be on for at most like 4 laps. So you had this really cool offset of like Vettel started on the medium, did 3 stints of medium tyres, and then a 5-lap sprint at the end. Because the soft was rapid for those 5 laps, but the medium was obviously the race tyre. And then the other drivers, I think Alonso, Raikkonen, and Hamilton, started on the soft, got it out of the way, and did medium from there on.
Yeah.
So it would just give it a good mix-up if you just, like, I don't know, bought a tyre that nobody wanted to be on for more than 5 laps.
No.
Because that's basically what we had this race.
Well, I think, that could work theoretically, but of course it would also, I wouldn't want to see an 18-lap maximum tyre stint rule. Of course, I get why it had to be implemented this weekend, but, if that was to come into place, I wouldn't want them saying, well, you can only ever do 20 laps on a set of tyres or something like that either. But of course, the other big news before the race had even started was, and it's always Ferrari that managed this, isn't it, Jamie? Carlos Sainz wouldn't be starting the Grand Prix because due to I want to say it was fuel line or fuel injection problem. How are Ferrari always the team that muck this up?
Who knows? I don't know. Yeah, but it's classic Maranello. Sainz has a weird amount of DNSs, I feel like, that aren't his fault. I remember back Belgium when he was at McLaren, wasn't it, in 2020?
Yeah.
He got a DNS from like 5th or 6th on the grid. So, yeah, it's a shame, but he didn't really qualify that well, so I guess it wasn't.
Yeah, but with the way the race went, he could have probably still got a podium. Well, not podium, P4, which is kind of where the fight was at, wasn't it? But of course, we got to the start, and it's safe to say on this podcast, Jamie and I have made our... we've never, to be fair, neither of us have ever claimed to be impartial on this show, or unbiased or anything like that. But, Jamie, talk us through it.
I was amazed at the misjudgment from Lewis Hamilton, personally. But, Verstappen got away fairly well from the lead. You had Russell come alongside him almost immediately, and Lewis Hamilton probably got the best start out of the 3.
Because he was on the softs rather than the mediums.
He was. So he full-on sent it around the outside of turn 1, but forgot to leave any room. When he literally started 3rd and there's 2 cars on the inside that he can see going to the corner, he just squeezes them both massively. Russell can't do anything. Verstappen's on the inside of the track, and Hamilton's got like half a track's width to use on the outside if he wants it. But like Silverstone 2021, just thinks, I'm just turning in here and we'll see what happens.
It's the opposite of 2021.
I know, it's the opposite, isn't it? Sorry.
It's the amount of people I saw on Twitter going, if you blame Lewis for Silverstone 2021, then you have to blame George Engel. It's not quite how it works.
That's not quite the same, no. But yes, that was a bad attempt at bait, but we'll get back to the point of this race. And Lewis Hamilton, into the gravel, out the race, messed up George Russell's race as well. They're both off. Russell was able to carry on. Hamilton's out on lap 1. I guess, is that the first time this season that he's out on lap 1?
It's the first time he's DNF this season. He was the only driver other than Max to have done every single lap this year. Wow,
there you go. First DNF this year. Obviously, last DNF, I think, was Abu Dhabi last year.
Yeah.
And the one before was...
If he's done every lap this year.
Yeah, the one before was obviously Belgium last year when he did the same thing to Alonso on lap 1. Yeah, it's just a bit odd. He's obviously knows how to drive, and he shouldn't be making misjudgments like this. So,
well, apparently, and by no means am I suggesting it makes it okay, but apparently Mercedes, of course, they couldn't... So Hamilton basically had to start on a set of soft compound tyres because he didn't have enough mediums for the race. So Mercedes had apparently come up with something that basically meant George Russell was just going to let him by into turn 1. But of course, then Russell got a better start on Max, so I think Lewis has kind of gone for the Hail, because by the time him and Russell collided, he was actually alongside Verstappen. Like, his front wheels were at the same point as Verstappen's. But of course, I'm guessing he just thought George Russell was going to back out of it and slot in behind Max. But of course, that's, all well and good, but George hasn't backed out and you've turned across him.
It's a bit ridiculous to be making plans like that down towards turn 1 anyway. If you want to do team orders, do it later in the lap, surely.
But this was because I think they were obviously basing it on what happened yesterday. So it was kind of, if Lewis is alongside you because he should get a better start because he's on softer tyres on the clean side, just let him go. But of course, I think Hamilton obviously watched it back. Obviously said, it was completely his fault, and obviously it was. I've seen some Lewis fans on Twitter trying to blame George, as I mentioned, or somehow blame Max as well for that one. Lewis has openly admitted he just misjudged it. Not that I ever want to compare him to Esteban Ocon, but it was kind of he thought, just like Ocon did on Saturday, that there were one car on the inside rather than two. But I guess the good thing, well, not good thing, but the thing about it, of course, was he only ruined his own race, didn't he? Because, of course, we'll talk about it a bit later
Russell's
on.
As well.
He put Russell on the back foot, but I think Russell finished exactly where he would have either way, all things considered. Yeah. So, of course, he did basically, in the bigger picture, only screw himself. Did help Oscar Piastri out, though, who instantly went back into P2.
Yeah, obviously he started 6th due to that deletion and ended up back where he would have been had he not invalidated his lap anyway. So, yeah, good stuff for Oscar Piastri, and he was very thankful in the cool-down room afterwards.
He wasn't he?
Which was quite funny.
A bit of a menace, but it's Oscar Piastri, so we allow it. But of course, that brought out the safety car, which meant, of course, that we had the farcical thing of the safety cars out for 2 laps, and then cars decide to pit.
Yeah, because the way it worked out, obviously, 18 laps, 3 stints of 18 was 54, and then the race was 57 laps. So if you do 3 laps at the start and then you can pit, you can do the rest of the race with just 2 stops. So that is exactly what I would have done if I was racing in a league race which had these random rules, because I think that was a smart thing to do. And the drivers who did do it who actually had a car capable of being good, like Valtteri Bottas, I think was the only one, actually did reap its rewards towards the end. Yeah,
especially obviously if you could look after your tyres quite well as well. But I guess the other thing, wasn't it, early on, of course, was the fact Nico Hulkenberg's a moron.
Oh, yeah. I forgot about that. That was a bit
I bet you did.
Mistake.
I bet you did. I bet you forgot about that, Jamie.
I just think he fancied a -2 place grid penalty. So, probably made up for all of the stuff that happened on Saturday to him. So, thought, Ocon took me out of 4th. I'm going to just take a -2 place grid penalty, do it. And yeah, bad mistake, obviously. It's paid the penalty, but the car was never scoring points over 57 laps anyway. So, it's what it is. Good race to make a mistake.
Fair enough. I mean, you say that. He wasn't far away from points at the end.
Was he not? I thought he was not far off.
Alfa Romeo got a double points finish, and Haas is no slower than the Alfa, I'd argue.
Tyre wear, though, is absolutely horrendous.
They only had to do 18 laps. You told me tyre wear wasn't a problem.
Tyre wear never mattered. Actually.
Exactly. You've just got to admit it. The Hulk's not got it. Simple as that.
Sorry, where's Hamilton in this situation?
He was making it interesting at the front until he was no longer at the front.
Yeah, at the front very briefly.
Yes, yeah. I mean, by lap 6, though, it was kind of, again, how many times have we said that this year where there was a lot of overtakes going on, but just not many of them are very exciting. George Russell overtook Sergio Perez, which was quite interesting because, of course, Perez has got a quicker car, remember? And George managed to get past him and then never saw Checo again all day. But it was kind of Russell early on, wasn't he? He was kind of making all the big moves, wasn't it? Alex Albon led a lap for the first time in his Formula 1 career, I believe.
Really?
So that was quite... I believe so.
Wow.
I don't believe he ever led a lap in Red. He might have led a couple of laps at Red Bull, actually. But it's certainly the first laps he's led at Williams. And the first lap Williams have led in a long old time. But it kind of just was a lot of DRS overtakes, as we've seen all season, wasn't it?
DRS I think was probably slightly too powerful.
Well, it was better on Sunday. Once the headwind got removed.
The headwind got, yeah. They changed the rule by stopping the wind.
Exactly. They stopped wind. They put a huge wall at turn 1 to stop the wind coming in. But kind of, the only real things that happened were later on in the race, wasn't it? Lap 33. Of course, we always bang on about Fernando Alonso in 33. That was the lap he almost took himself out of the race with a nice oversteer moment. So, showcase that whether you're the most experienced or the least experienced driver on the grid, you can almost drop it at turn 3, or drop it if you're awesome.
Yeah, completely drop it. But Alonso, obviously, the wily old fox, was able to find an escape road and get back going.
And almost took out Leclerc in the process.
Did almost take out. I don't quite know how he got away with that on unsafe release or unsafe
because it's
Alonso.
I was thinking about this earlier, Jamie. We're going to go on a slight tangent here. I reckon the worst thing that could happen to Max Verstappen in the next couple of seasons is he has a championship battle with Alonso. Not because I believe Alonso's quicker than him, but just because I believe Alonso would moan at the FIA more than anyone else, and Max would finally have to start racing with more respect.
I think Max does race with quite a lot of respect. He doesn't really have to race that much at all anymore.
He doesn't race at all, mate, is what actually happens.
Yeah, maybe. But
that
Alonso,
would be fireworks.
Alonso and Max. Alonso's just a fan of Max, it feels like, at this point. So I do. Obviously, that would go if they were battling for anything. But even in Monaco, Alonso was like, that's annoying, but fair play.
Yeah. Lap 41. I mean, this was kind of the big thing, wasn't it? Towards the end of the race, was just how many drivers were starting to feel under the weather. As we mentioned, it was basically a 57-lap qualifying session. So Logan Sargent was sick, had to retire from the Grand Prix. Esteban Ocon was also sick, didn't retire from the Grand Prix. And Pierre Gasly, we discovered, couldn't overtake and stay on the circuit either.
No, and even when being overtaken, he couldn't keep the other car on the circuit because he pushed off George Russell at one point as well, didn't he? So, yeah, it was just a brutal race, to be fair. Like, pretty much unanimously, every driver said it was the hardest race they can remember. Obviously, Sargent, fair play for pulling out when he did. I think probably the right thing to do, and fair play to Williams for letting him, because
I think they just didn't want another car trashed.
Yeah, maybe. And yeah, there was so much physical difficulties going on due to the heat and the humidity. And like the drivers are saying they're basically breathing in fire, like through the helmets. You saw Russell was like almost taking his gloves off to try and get some airflow to his body. And yeah, it was, I think that it was something like 52 degrees at the track level. And obviously they've got 3 layers of overalls on. And like their water bottles will be like the same temperature as the car. They're so heated that like, yeah, it was absolutely brutal conditions. But one driver who loved it was Valtteri Bottas, who is probably the driver I would back to win if they did like a decathlon or something.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, cycling at least.
Yeah, because he's just super fit, and obviously he's lived his whole lives in saunas and stuff. So he was ready for it. And yeah, it was pretty brutal. A lot of the driver, I think Stroll said he was fainting down the straight, which I think is probably exaggeration, because if he was fainting...
No, did you not see this clip, Ab, when he crossed the line? There's a clip of his onboard after he crossed the line of literally his head like swinging from side to side because he can barely stay conscious.
Wow.
So I think he then had to get rushed to the medical centre. 3 other drivers took themselves to the medical centre for dehydration after the Grand Prix. You had 2 drivers being sick. It was not ideal, I think is the way we're going to describe it. I mean, Lando, Oscar and Max, obviously all after the Grand Prix, were knackered. Yeah. Like, just laid on the floor, and none of them looked particularly well. George Russell looked pretty ill as well. Obviously, we mentioned him a second ago. Bottas, fine. Just because he's probably... We mentioned this pre-show, actually, but Bottas is probably the best athlete in Formula 1 at the moment, the healthiest driver.
Yeah. I actually follow him on Strava, and in the morning of Sunday, he did like something like a 50k bike ride just to warm up for the race.
Yeah,
so he clearly wasn't bothered by the weather.
No, it's just Bottas things at the end of the day. But it did mean, of course, at the end of the race, Max Verstappen took the win, but only 5 seconds ahead of McLaren. They weirdly kept close to him all day long, didn't they?
They did. I think Max probably had a bit in hand.
Oh yeah, if you got the lead and if you need to turn up the like week, you can. You're just going to do the bare minute. You're going to, what's it Alain Prost always used to say?
Win the race
in the slowest way possible, yeah. So I think that was Verstappen's game plan tonight. But of course, yeah, another McLaren double podium. George, as we said, obviously recovered to P4, did very, very well. So I think, yeah, that early incident, I think he was going to finish P4 either way. It just might have been that he could have hassled the McLarens on a weekend that we really thought Mercedes were going to struggle. Charles Leclerc P5, Alonso, Ocon, Bottas and Zhou getting a double points haul for Alfa Romeo means they're back ahead of Haas and probably going to stay ahead of them. And despite the fact, obviously, George and Perez had a battle early on, Perez somehow only came 10th.
Yeah, he got a couple of penalties for track limits, didn't he? Just really, really poor weekend for Perez. Poor streak of a few weekends now.
Cause it's basically been most of the season, hasn't it, really?
Yeah, but even, like, he's not even troubling the thought of a podium anymore, really. Like,
no. He's not a consideration for any of the other drivers. I mean,
he scored 5 points in the last 3 races.
Alarming. 5 points in the last 3.
Well, Bottas has got more than that, hasn't he? He's definitely on 4. Did Bottas not score?
I don't think Bottas has scored any other races recently. I don't believe.
No, he hasn't. But yeah,
No.
Bottas only has 1 fewer point.
In the last 3 Grand Prix than Sergio Perez.
In the last 3 Grand Prix.
That is... I mean, has Albon outscored him? Or is right there with him still? No,
Yeah,
that's Monza, sorry, isn't it? Where Perez got a podium. Was the one I was thinking
Monza.
of.
So Singapore, Japan, Qatar. He's on 5 points.
Yeah. To be fair, he'd only be on 4 if he hadn't taken out Alex, and Alex would be on 3. So he would have scored as many as Bottas and won more than Alex Albon in a Williams, which is kind of staggering, isn't it?
Yeah. And Gasly also got a penalty at the end of the race for track limits, which raised Zhou from P11 up to P9. So what a legend.
We love to see it, yeah. Because Stroll got a penalty as well, didn't he? Because he was inside the top 10. So Zhou went from 11th to 9th.
Was crying that Stroll was saying, like, you couldn't see the white lines because you're so, like, zoned out, basically, with dehydration and heat. And obviously the resurfaced painted curves, you genuinely could not see where the track was, he was saying.
No. Well, three drivers, I believe, Jamie, got away without a single track limit warning this weekend. Can
Lewis
you name
Hamilton.
them? Yep. He was one.
Actually, he was off the track, so if he managed to come back on, he would have got one.
Yep, like Hulkenberg did at Austria, when the engine blew up.
Yep. Carlos Sainz, probably.
Yep, that's 2.
Daniel Ricciardo?
No.
Well, he didn't get one.
No, but he also wasn't driving.
I don't know. Zhou's usually quite good at not getting them.
It was Max Verstappen who didn't get a single track limits warning.
Yeah.
It goes to show just how hard he wasn't pushing.
He had the McLarens at arm's length, you'd imagine.
Exactly. We've kind of rattled through everything very, very quickly there, haven't we? We've done a very good job. I'm proud of us. Are we doing... What do we want to do first, Jamie? It's your choice.
We'll do the quiz. I think you're going to like this.
Okay.
We're going back to having some time pressure.
Oh, no. I enjoyed the last couple where it was all calm and collected.
Because this was the first time McLaren have got back-to-back double podiums since Turkey and Canada in 2010.
That's mad.
Which is a bit mad. But they've obviously had back-to-back 2 podiums in Japan, 2 podiums in Qatar as well.
Can we shout out as well the 2010 Canadian Grand Prix for ruining Formula 1 and its tyres ever since?
Yes. So, interestingly, Turkey and Canada 2010, there were... How many is that? There were 13 drivers to score points in either of those races. You have to name all 13. You've got a minute.
Okay. Go. Seb, Mark, Jensen, Lewis, Alonso, Massa, Schumacher, Rosberg, Petrov, Kubica, Sutil.
You're doing well. I think you've only got 3 left and you've got 45
Heidfeld.
No.
Who was in the other Force India in 2010? Hulkenberg.
No.
Yeah, I know he wasn't in the Force India. Who was in the other Force India?
30 seconds.
Come on,
dropped.
who was in the other Force India?
That's the question.
Barrichello. Did
No.
he score? No. It wouldn't have been any of the back markers. Trying to think of the other team. Buemi.
Yep. 2 more.
Alguersuari.
No. 10 seconds. Go on, you can do this. 2 more.
Force India. Come on, Sutil. It was... Who was with
5
him?
seconds.
It wasn't Fisichella. He gone. Oh, I don't know. I rattled so many off then
Unlucky.
instantly.
Yeah.
Can you tell me the team and I'll try and get it?
So it's the other
one.
Force India.
Yep. Which
And it
was... Who's in the other Force India?
The other Sauber that you didn't mention as well.
The other Sauber. Well, that was Kobayashi, wasn't it, still?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's annoying. I should have got that. And the other Force India driver, it was Sutil and... It wasn't Duresta, because he came in the year after. Who was in the other Force India in 2010?
Italian?
It wasn't Fisichella.
No.
Italian.
You're
Was it
gonna kick yourself.
Luizzi, was it?
It was Luizzi.
Luizzi was in the Force India in 2010.
Yeah, he qualified 5th that race.
Which race?
Canada.
Okay.
Canada. Yeah.
How am I meant to remember that, Jamie?
I'd have got that. Just
Yeah,
saying.
you probably would have, because you made the quiz.
Yeah, well done. 11 out of 13.
I'll take that, to be fair. I'm happy with how quickly I rattled
Pretty
off
much
the first
all
few.
11 of, or 10 of them in the first 10 seconds.
Yeah, I just had to go for it. Who was your driver of the weekend then, Jamie?
Probably obvious, but Oscar Piastri.
Oh, I think that's fair.
Win P2, pole position, P2 on the grid. No, P6 on the grid, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Quality weekend. And he's
Yes.
quickly becoming one of the most impressive rookie seasons in a long time. So,
We probably also should make a bigger deal of the fact Max Verstappen's got him on his third world title and has now got almost double the points of anyone else.
Yeah, it feels like such a...
It was a foregone conclusion by round 6, wasn't it, to be fair?
So it's been coming for a year. There's so little fanfare about it for that kind of reason. But fair play. Up there with his future father-in-law. So, yeah.
Do you reckon
3 times
Kelly will
champion
stick
of the world.
around, or do you reckon she's eyeing up Liam Lawson now? She likes her next bit of young Red Bull meat, doesn't she?
Oh dear. Right, that is not a conversation I want to have.
Fair enough.
Also, Joe Guan Yu deserves a shout out. What a guy.
He does.
He did
definitely.
quality. P19 to P9. Ended the race with the soft tyres for 5 laps and was going rapid. So, yeah.
Unlike George Russell,
I
who
enjoyed
went on
that,
those softs and did nothing.
Yeah. I enjoyed his race. Double points for Alpha. And up to P8 in the championship, which, unless Haas's Austin upgrade is actually good, they're probably going to hold on to.
It would make me laugh if Haas's Austin upgrade was really good and AlphaTauri seemed to perform a bit better like they did at Suzuka. And
But even
Alfa Romeo
AlphaTauri,
still somehow come last.
They're 11 points off now, AlphaTauri. So,
Well, you
they've
only
only
need
scored
3 points a weekend.
yeah, they've scored for 5 all season, though.
Yeah, but they scored 2 in Singapore, Jamie. That's all that
Yeah,
matters.
in a race with a lot of DNFs.
Yeah, to be fair. Predictions recap, Jamie. And we've actually been forward planning this week and wrote down who we
have,
picked.
rather than have to go find them rapidly at the end.
What were the scores on the doors coming into this weekend?
I
again?
think I'm still 2 ahead of you.
You're 2 ahead, but how many points are we on?
53 versus 51.
Okay. So Jamie predicted Max Verstappen for pole on
On Friday. Yeah.
Yep.
Sergio
Yep.
Perez to win the sprint.
Yep.
Didn't happen. Nowhere
Nope.
near.
So 2 points so far.
Max Verstappen to win the feature.
4 points.
Lando Norris in P2.
1 point. 5 points.
And Carlos Sainz P3 didn't even start.
No, you very much did give Carlos Sainz your typical kiss of death, didn't you?
Yeah.
I can't say I did much better, though, because I predicted Max for pole on Friday, so I got 2 points there. I predicted Max to win the sprint on Saturday, didn't get that right. I did predict Max to win the Grand Prix, though, so 2 points there. I also predicted Lando P2. I predicted it first, and I thought Perez wouldn't have a stinker. So we both got 5 points.
Yeah, so it hasn't changed. I feel like we've got the same score like 3 weeks in a row, but that's fine with me because I'm
normally
winning.
you copy me, basically.
Well, let me go first and go different then.
No, because you'll just say Max and then I'm screwed. So I'm scared of that. But it does mean, what's that, 58 to 56 now? So it's still
all
to
just
play
put
for.
the numbers in wrong.
Yes.
Was it 5 each we got?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I just put the numbers in wrong, but we'll fix it.
And Jamie then. I mean, what are we giving it for a race rating? Because it felt like one of those weekends that, looking back, probably was a disaster, but nothing massively dangerous happened, so we got away with it.
I quite enjoyed it overall. I like seeing the drivers absolutely physically pushed. Obviously, this probably was a bit too far.
You like seeing drivers being sick.
It was probably a bit too far, but I like when you can tell they're athletes and it looks like hard work. So this is probably
nothing Jamie loves more than watching 20 sweaty men.
Only 19. Carlos Sainz wasn't there.
Oh yeah.
Yes, indeed. So I would probably give overall weekend experience a 7 out of 10. The sprint race was very good, and the feature was pretty good.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with you there on a 7 out of 10, I believe. Like I said, it felt like there was a lot of disasters that narrowly got averted this weekend, but it is what it is. Jamie, we've done pretty well today. We've managed to smash through an entire sprint weekend in 45 minutes, which is good going by our standards.
Yeah.
Outro this.
Outro. Yeah, thank you for watching. We're back next Tuesday for a US Grand Prix preview it's not a doubleheader, is it? No. Well, US and Mexico is afterwards.
Yes.
But yeah, we'll see you next week. Hope you enjoyed. Leave comments and everything. Give us those sweet, sweet interactions. Go subscribe to our podcast channel because this won't be on Matt's channel forever. 2024, we'll be switching over. And yeah, thanks for watching. We'll see you next week.